Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the part in the conference where everyone starts to get a little tired of sitting and staring at folks, so we're going to try to keep it very engaging this afternoon. This is, of course, our breakout for manufacturing operations, where we'll spend the better part of 45 minutes with the fantastic panel that we've assembled here today, talking about some of the latest trends, wins, challenges in all that is AI for manufacturing. I'll be your moderator. My name is Alex Amato, for those that I haven't had a chance to meet yet. I lead our customer services organization at C3 AI. Customer services is a combination of professional services, our COE services, as well as customer success. I've been at C3 close to 7 years now and spent a large part of that time working with some of our largest customers on various AI-enabled digital transformation projects, programs, initiatives. And I was talking to someone last night at dinner. I think one of the really remarkable things about C3 Transform, for those that have now attended this conference more than once, is that with every year that goes by, significant progress is made, and I think one of the areas where we're seeing the most progress is in manufacturing, and the value that we're seeing AI and machine learning bring to this space is pretty remarkable. We heard yesterday, today, from companies like Shell, from Georgia Pacific, but they're not alone. I think many, more than ever, more than last year, more than ever before, of the companies represented here at C3 Transform are now well on their way with this AI-enabled or AI-powered digital transformation in the manufacturing space. So, for all of us at C3 who have the privilege of working with many of the largest, most complex manufacturing operations in the world, it is truly a pleasure and really exciting for all of us. And I hope that many of you have felt that excitement and been able to share a lot of those stories over the last day and a half. So today, as I mentioned, we are going to spend the majority of our time in a panel discussion. We've assembled a great set of panelists here that I'd like to introduce you to before we kick off. Beginning with the gentleman here directly to my left, Daniele Iacovelli. Daniele is Senior Vice President, Global Head of Digital Analytics and Operational Excellence at Roche. Prior to Roche, Daniele spent 11 years at McKinsey, where he served as a partner and global leader for digital and advanced analytics. To Daniele's left, Clark Dressen. Clark is a global director at Dow, where he served in numerous digital roles in and related to manufacturing over the last 35 years. And to his left, Ilke Gozorin. Ilke is head of sales for enterprise AI at Google Cloud. Prior to Google, Ilke served in numerous roles at Tesla, Bloom Energy, and GE Power. Our themes for today, in thinking about how we might tackle a subject sort of as broad as AI for manufacturing, we wanted to spend some time really kind of stepping through the problem that many of us are facing today in terms of how to actually start to unlock value from the potential that AI has in the manufacturing space. So we'll start with really the role that AI can play, has to play, should play in manufacturing. Then we'll move to how many of us are thinking about actually identifying and prioritizing use cases, picking the right problems. We've heard that from a number of customers who presented this week in and outside of manufacturing. Next, we'll talk about some of the most critical organizational changes that are actually required to pull off a transformation of this nature, which then translates nicely into how do we actually drive the change management initiatives, the adoption that we need to succeed. And lastly, I'll ask these gentlemen to share some lessons learned, both good and bad, successes, failures, in their respective journeys thus far. So with that, I'll kick things off And as I mentioned, we'll start with really the role of AI in manufacturing. Daniele, my first question is for you. What do you see as really being the driving force for AI as far as enabling digital transformation in the manufacturing space? And maybe part two to that question is, why is it really important today that companies embrace this change?
Yes, thank you. I think, driving forces, if I'm reflecting also on my current experience at Roche pharmaceutical company, biotech company, as well as my previous experience when I was serving many companies as a McKinsey consultant. The absolute need is basically business value, right? Business impact. If I'm reflecting at the aspiration that we have at Roche, we want to, let's say, launch and develop 5 times more products, more medicine, at half of a cost for a society. And that's a target which we will not be able to achieve just working leaner or doing some lean operational excellence activities. We will never get there. So we need to leverage the tons of data that we have in a pharmaceutical company. We need to collect data. It's a regulatory requirement. And what we are doing is really, let's say, significantly changing the way we are developing, manufacturing, and supplying medicine. So for instance, the development of a medicine, of a molecule, is quite of a biological process. In order to understand how to predict the outcome of a molecule, we need to look at the physics, biological, let's say, components, as well as equipment data, as well as people-related data. And really understanding how to, let's say, manage such a product in advance. It's too complex for a human brain to handle. So there is an absolutely need to leverage data and intelligence to come up with a different way of developing and manufacturing, let's say, molecules for us. So I think one of the driving forces is really business value disrupting the way that we are working. Second element is obviously that we see in the technology field, we see some advances. In terms of, let's say, AI techniques. We are going more and more into reinforcement learning, deep learning. The cost of technology is decreasing. Sensor cost, 10 years ago was definitely higher than now. Robotics, automation decreases a lot in terms of cost. And the last, let's say, driving force is, I think it's really also people. I see a big shift in terms of the openness to embrace actually digital and advanced analytics. If I'm looking at my company, really across all layers, young folks, more senior folks, they all are excited about digital. They are all expecting that digital makes a difference for their day-to-day work. And I think that's also a key component which shows the importance and also the driving force of advanced analytics. I think just one final comment. I don't think that companies actually are now thinking about if they should apply advanced analytics or artificial intelligence. It was maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when I had discussion with CEOs, they were asking, prove me the value. I think now it's rather a discussion around how can we scale? How do I create impact at scale, not only in one isolated area, but actually across the network?
Great, thank you. Maybe piggybacking off of that, question for you, Clark. Where are you in the manufacturing space most excited about AI? There are countless areas, to Daniele's point, it's not if, it's where, how, and how fast can we go.
Sure.
What do you see as potentially the biggest game changers in terms of the application of AI in manufacturing?
Absolutely, and I think you hit on some great points, right, along that line. But if you think about, and for us, big process industry, chemical materials manufacturer, 125 years of operations experience, right? So we're very well instrumented. We've got a ton of DCS control. We've got global procedures that get deployed all over the world, well experienced operators. And so that's great. That gets you so far, right? But when you start looking at the AI tools, you start to think about how they could be utilized to interpret that data, right? Today we have data in silos for engineering and maintenance and operations and quality. And before you weren't able to really leverage across those silos of data, right? So the ability to start to expand the visibility for an operations person or a maintenance person or quality or anything else to really to really start to understand data sources and areas of information that they may not have had exposure to before. And so I think driving the decision making quicker, but better depth of information in terms of being able to take some of these other characteristics and other elements into that equation is going to be super helpful. And then you also start to think about how to take, and you're right, I mean, we see that it's not if, when, you're seeing a growth in analytics, and we're seeing our plants and our sites and our businesses start to devote analytics personnel and expertise into those environments to try to better glean information. But as we talk about the ability to start to dumb these down is not the right word, but to make these more approachable, right, through some of the tools we've been talking about in the session, so that an operations technician or a maintenance technician can start to use these tools in a conversant way and start to access that information without being a data specialist or a data scientist. To me, that's going to be game changing as well. But so decision making, and really trying to get these skills and to get these tools out down to where the decisions are actually getting made. I think those are the two pieces that I'm most excited about.
Great. Okay, on the other side of the coin, right? When we think about this pressing need, if not mandate, to start to deliver these solutions at scale to help transform these manufacturing operations, what are you seeing in terms of trends, themes, as far as software platforms and applications to help power these, drive these initiatives?
Thanks for the question. I think the biggest thing that we are seeing right now is everyone's trying to solve a specific problem, right? So we're approaching AI and AI platform solutions like C3 AI as enablers of being able to solve specific business problems. As Google, we have 10, 11 products that over 1 billion people use every day. We have our own AI solutions embedded into those. And what we want to achieve with our partnership with C3 is to really integrate some of our best-in-class AI solutions to help specific business problems that, like my colleagues are talking about, to address those. So it's really about solving key issues between OT, IT, like I'm sure everybody here has data swamps, as I like to call them. How are you able to get insights out of those? How are you able to leverage those, right? So these are all the same issues and problems that we've been talking about for the last 10 years. I think today, with the help of your solutions and platforms, we're able to address it cheaper, at scale, with a lot of security built in, to bring and accelerate value, right? Ultimately, it starts with that specific business case that we're trying to solve and quantifying and defending a value in front of our customers. Hope that helps.
Absolutely, thank you. Let's move on to the second topic area I was hoping to cover, which is arguably one of the most critical keys to success, in really regardless of where you are in your AI journey, which is solving the right problems. Daniele, back to you. We talked a few minutes ago about the fact that there's no shortage of kind of game changer solutions in the AI space for manufacturing, but this can also be sort of overwhelming, right? In terms of where do you actually start? How do you assess your own organization, your own manufacturing operations? What would you say to an organization kind of earlier in that journey as far as how to be thinking about selecting the right problems to go after?
Yeah, I think, if I'm reflecting how Roche did it in the past, which was not so successful, they started actually to focus on technology. And they were saying it would be great to actually have predictive maintenance in site XYZ. Or it would be great to have an advanced analytics platform there. So it was pretty much technology focus. And people were exploring toys. So what we shifted at a certain point is saying we need to be obviously value focused. And at the leadership level, we were defining the value themes that we encourage, obviously all the sites and labs that we have, to, let's say, solve. So in our case, obviously we're looking at how fast can we launch molecules to our patients, how robust our products in terms of quality are, and obviously how efficient are we, let's say, operating. These are the three major, let's say, themes that we are looking at. And based on these themes, we are then identifying use cases. I think the important piece is that we are looking at end-to-end. So what we are not doing is at a certain point we are clustering specific use cases into one cluster so that we can cover the end-to-end view. Because if we're saying we would like now to apply some AI on increasing the speed of launching products, we need to obviously look at the development area, we need to look at the manufacturing area and the quality area. Just doing something in quality will not help us end-to-end. So I think that's what we are driving more and more, is looking end-to-end, how to connect specific use cases. And then I would say classical approach, we are putting it into a matrix, high value, ease of implementation, and define the priorities.
Great, thank you. Clark, to you, if we think about this prioritization framework that Daniele just mentioned, obviously value is sort of the North Star there. What are some of the other, as you've seen, most important dimensions or components of that value matrix that ultimately result in the right priorities being executed on?
Sure. No, that's a great question, and it's funny because those are some of the debates you get into with senior leaders, obviously, and we've been doing this innovation space, now for quite a while, and AI is just another tool along with robotics and some of the things we were talking about earlier, and to me it's interesting because when you start thinking about value and try to quantify that, certainly there's many aspects, and I think we use these tools and we use these opportunities to kind of highlight some of those. So everybody always thinks of the dollar side, obviously. Hey, if I can keep the plant running longer, or not have expensive outages. But certainly you think about things like quality, right? If I have less off-spec material, right? Well, that equates to value. You're having happier customers, fewer returns, right? Those type of things. We can talk about safety, and there's a monetary value to safety and people not getting hurt, time off work and lawsuits and whatever else may come from a safety incident, right? We talk about efficiency, but we very often try not to talk about efficiency in terms of, wow, an AI tool or something is going to help us reduce 20% of the workforce. No, it's going to allow us to take these tools, let people make decisions better, and really streamline their day so they can focus on the things that are really important. Maybe go improve throughput of the plant or something like that. Not just monitor alarms and respond to all kind of RCIs and everything else. It's a huge waste of time. So I think quality, safety, efficiency, productivity, profitability, all those things factor into that value discussion. But to me, it really boils down to having the discussions with the businesses and with the functions to really understand what are the things that are going to drive that. So Dow, for example, being again in the chemical side, we have very integrated sites. So we have ethylene crackers, for example. One of the things that we're actually applying the C3 AI tool to now, the furnace, trying to keep those up. They're the engine that runs everything else. And so you may say, reliability is important, but if that unit goes down, it impacts everything else on the site. They're all downstream products coming from that piece. And we actually had a senior leader, not an IT person and not a manufacturing person, but we were in some of the reviews for these programs. And Dow's actually, we're a very cyclical business industry, and right now, if you read the news, we're kind of in the down cycle of that cycle. So we're running our plants at reduced rates in some cases. And so somebody actually made the comment along the lines of, well, we understand you're going to invest in this reliability thing. Is it really that important if we're running our plants at reduced rates? And we're like, well, think about it. Here's the engine that's driving your car, right? And you may be driving 55 instead of 70, but if the engine cuts out at 55, your car is still not going anywhere, right? So you have to tie that back to that value of helping people understand that in some of these cases, the reliability and these other pieces are just fundamental to the value equation for Dow. But all those other pieces, it goes back to listening to the business, listening to the problems you're trying to solve, and applying those.
Great insight, thank you.
I think just one comment. I think the debate that we always had was, should we go for the high value but very complex to implement, or should we go for the quick wins? And we obviously discussed then, I think it should be rather a balance. Right? We said, let's do some also early wins to also start building actually internal capabilities, start building the tech infrastructure, and also start actually gaining financial value, which will refund the bigger topics that we have.
If I,
And,
can
yeah,
I
small,
add a
small
comment?
benefit on something you do a lot of. Yeah, huge.
Do you mind if I add a comment to
yeah.
that?
Please.
Do we have time? All right.
Absolutely.
So it's funny, we were in a meeting with a customer in the room actually yesterday with Tom Siegel and C3 leadership, and somebody asked the question, have you done your use case mapping and figured out what are the most important use cases versus value, right? And the answer was no, right? But then the question became, where do we start? Do we start at the top right? Do we start in the middle? Do we start in the bottom left? So my personal view on that, and having seen it across multiple businesses now, your first effort, your first project, if you will, needs to fund the future ones, right? It has to be in such a way, done in such a way, that it leads to use case 2, leads to use case 3. That is, I think, the only pure recipe for success. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I think one piece of that is demonstrating success and aligning the business to that vision. Another piece of it, though, I think if done well, is the actual, technology piece, right? So that you're actually building up to the more complex use cases. Yeah, great. Clearly, this is a incredibly important topic. We all have strong opinions about. I think we heard a lot of customers share lessons learned and their stories about prioritization of use cases this week. Another really important and related kind of key to driving this transformation is organizational alignment, right? And sometimes that means actually changing organizational alignment to allow for these AI programs to grow and actually drive value. Daniele, what kinds, in your experience at Roche and working with clients at McKinsey, what kinds of organizational changes are you seeing, have you seen required to enable this type of successful AI program?
Yes. I mean, one element that we were very often debating was the operating model. So also, let's say, the connection between all these kind of operational excellence, lean folks, and digital. Should they work together? Are they separated communities and functions? And we recognize that actually, let's say, the successful deployment of a solution, it's not only a technical challenge or a technical transformation, it's also a change management, let's say, thing. We need to redesign business processes. So we are working together on predictive maintenance of, let's say, bioreactors that we have. But if we would just apply the tool and we would do preventive maintenance as in the past, we would not gain any value. So one of the organizational changes that we did is integrating the digital community together with the operational excellence community, upskilling the operational excellence community to become digital savvy, to make sure that every deployment of a solution has an integrated part of change management, operational excellence, business redesign of processes, and really making sure that we are delivering value. That's one of the big items. Second item was the overall governance. So we created the so-called Center of Excellence, which were not only, let's say, monitoring the value realization of all the initiative, which is an important component, to understand how much can we reinvest in additional use cases, but also setting the standards. I mean, Roche is a very decentralized organization. We have multiple sites. They can decide whatever they want. And it ends up that we have 1,000 flowers blooming, multiple systems, multiple use cases, hundreds of platforms. And we shifted, let's say, this in saying we are building this center of excellence, which are taking strategic decisions and giving directions in terms of what are the biggest value items, what is the strategy in terms of technology, infrastructure, data, and also how do we build capabilities, that we are doing this in a central way rather than allowing all the functions doing their own academy, their own tech strategy.
Great, thanks. Okay, the other piece that's related to the organizational change is really the new set of capabilities or skill sets that are required, right, in a center of excellence like what Daniele described. What advice or guidance would you give around how to either attract or develop and then retain that talent that's required to build, deploy, and sustain these solutions?
Yeah, tough thing to do. I think we're all aspiring to be able to try to achieve that. We all know that technology is the enabler, right? It's the people is where the value is, right? And many of our organizations, our customers' organizations, have people who have worked at companies for 20, 30 years who are set on doing things the way they've always done it. In a previous company of mine, at GE, it was very difficult to get these people who are the best in the world at what they do to change, right? We struggled with that, and I think companies are actually continuing to struggle with that. Creating a safe space for failure, it has to be top of mind for every leader. And this is a top-down initiative. No matter what we think or say about trying to adopt and scale technology and AI solutions within the working level, it has to be top-down. It has to resonate from every leaders in every discussion and every session that they hold, right? Every town hall, town meeting. It's a process that's difficult to do. We've all failed at it, and we have to keep trying and show small successes to achieve a bigger goal. That's how I think it should be approached. From a talent perspective, what I'm seeing is, so I have a very unique background, different background. It's not tech-based, technology-based. Sometimes I still wonder why Google hired me. but I come from the energy domain, the energy space. Probably you can tell from the companies that I worked for. The key differentiator, or why I think the value that I believe or hope to deliver for Google, is I'm able to have those outcome-based discussions. And we talked about it here on the panel, right? It's about quantifying, defending, and being able to prove the value of the use case that we're attacking or trying to solve, right? So those outcomes and being able to have those outcome-based discussions throughout a customer's organization, C-suite, all the way down to the person who's going to use the software or that technology is extremely, extremely important. So I think that is something that all companies should look for. You don't have to be an expert, right? There are experts that we can leverage and pull in. I think you have to be able to have that domain expertise plus the ability to have that outcome-based discussion with stakeholders.
One thing you said, okay, that I want to go back to, if I could, with you, Clark, was related to the challenge, almost a mindset shift, right? If you think about what it takes from a change management standpoint to drive adoption of some of these things. At Dow, what have you done? What are you seeing as far as some of those challenges, and what kinds of cultural changes even are you seeing effective to help drive that change?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, it's interesting, right? Because if you think about this, the technology is almost the easy part, right? And absolutely right. We say, okay, it's data and applications on top of that. But to the point that was being made, I mean, we have some operators, 30-year operators who, think they're pretty good at what they do, right? And you're introducing new tools and services and those type of things. So I think you have to stress that technology is it's like handing somebody a hammer, right? If you can choose to use it, you can choose to bang your forehead or something, I guess. But if you highlight the fact that there's new skill sets to be required, there's culture change. We're doing a lot of work with the functional leadership to again explain why, right? So back to what do we hope to get, and we've actually had where we are. We just finished a proof of concept. We're actually in the process of going production with that proof of concept now. But I think one of the best things we did from the beginning of the project was to get the SMEs involved in the discussion. So it wasn't just a theoretical, hey, let's just see if these AI tools actually deliver. It was, hey, let's talk about how this could help. And so we got into those decision making, into those value discussions of how you could change. But certainly the culture piece of it. Yeah, it's certainly one that you just have. I think we all have to be aware of. We have to look for the opportunities to reinforce. Some good advice I picked up from this session this week, and we're going to certainly take that forward as as we go in. You were talking about those big wins and those type of things. And I've had 2 or 3 different companies comment to me this week of finding the small things to celebrate and making sure you're doing that frequently and early, right? Mm-hmm. To really reinforce the fact, the adoption and the success, right, of starting to do those. So to me, that's how you're going to drive some of those culture pieces, right? You can't fly in and say, here's this new tool, you must use it. That'll fail. It fails every time, right?
Yeah. Daniele, anything from you to add as far as adoption, change management strategies at Roche?
So, what we are doing, obviously all the elements around capability building, I think we are focusing especially on the middle management layer, on how to build digital analytics leadership capabilities, because we recognize that in the past, middle management like shop floor supervisor, these scientists, they are strong scientists, great, let's say, manufacturing experts, and now they suddenly need to deal with data scientists, data engineers, and they need to interact with them, but they don't understand or they are not speaking the same language. So how to make sure that they are speaking the same language? We are introducing a role, so-called translator, analytics translator, which is a person which understands the business processes extremely well, and is also at least digital savvy, which is building the translation between the business and the data scientists, the pure, very technical people. That's one element that we are doing. The second element that we are doing is we're looking in more and more to say, how do we democratize actually analytics? Because what we believe is that we have 20,000 people in our organization. How many data scientists we have? Maybe, 1%, maybe 200. And we are saying these 200 people, these data scientists, data engineers, actually in future they are solving our problems. So what about the 18,000? What's their role? So what we are saying is that actually we need to make sure that the role of solving problems, the role of generating value needs to sit with everyone. So we're building more and more this no-code, low-code solution to at least for the maybe not super complex problem, but for the average problems that we are involving everyone in solving their own problems and creating their own solutions.
Great. So if we could move on and sort of think about some of the themes, both this week and this year, that we're seeing in the manufacturing space as it relates to AI. Clark, maybe I'll start with you. You mentioned one of the things you'll take away from this week, right, is celebrate those wins, build off of them. In terms of what's actually driving or resulting in those win themes, can you share, have you seen common threads either over the last couple of days or in your observations in the industry? What is driving this growing success?
Sure, and I think just like probably a lot of the companies here, for me this has been very interesting. We've been dabbling, right, in AI and models. We're a process industry. We've got entire models of our process chemistry and our plants and everything else. We've got AI type models that we've built over the years doing different tasks. It's just really not been a good way to scale or to drive that. So I think, again, one of the themes I've taken away, and again, listening to the stories this week and kind of prepping up there is, how to use a platform to kind of start to position, to deliver, and to drive that capability out to where you can actually apply some of those models and those tools that you've developed. I think that's going to be part of it. I think the other part of it is just the integration of it into the work processes and really driving down to those, what problems are you trying to solve, getting that visibility, getting that alignment and buy-in, and hearts and minds, right? Impacting that culture, right? Getting to where you've hit that heart and mind, and you've got the plants and the operations teams asking, hey, when's our turn, right? When do we get this stuff? Yeah, when do I get that? So to me, those were some of the takeaways.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Daniele, on sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, what kinds of themes have you seen in terms of common pitfalls and lessons learned? You mentioned for Roche specifically, it was too technology focused first, not as focused on the problem. Can you share other observations that you kind of see as far as what other companies are facing?
Yeah. I mean, one, as you said, right, this technology focused versus really business focused. I would not start any digital transformation without understanding the value and impact that you want to generate. Second element, I mean, also reflecting Roche, what did not work so well. We were extremely excited about creating the solution, and we were at a certain point cutting short actually doing the change management. So we were creating insights, but doing the actions and changing the operating model, changing the business processes, and working in a different way, we were not really following up. So this kind of following up on the actions is super important. We did not do it so well, and we are now changing the team setup. So we're making sure that from day one, we don't only have technical people, but we have also people, process experts, operation excellence experts, which would be able to follow up on that. And the third perspective, which I like, for instance, we were talking about generative AI. At the end, it's really about how do I make sure that the solution fulfills the needs of the user. And very often, we are just creating a solution which actually the user are not considering as helpful. So actually starting co-creating the front end and rather do something simple that they can use rather than over-complexifying from the beginning. So really being in an agile mode, what's the first MVP which starts to create some value, and then adapting, right, MVP by MVP, iterative. That's an important element that we have, let's say, faced as well.
Great. Okay, maybe one final question for you in this area. In talking with a lot of companies this week, what advice would you give to, a manufacturing company trying to find the right technology partners to really pull this off?
That's a great question.
Don't be biased.
No, I won't be biased. I won't be biased. I think, addressing some of the biggest problems that you have and not looking at it vertically would be my number one suggestion. Technology companies, cloud providers, that plumbing on the bottom layer is really standardized across everyone. I don't want to compete with anyone on a dollar per compute or dollar per storage level. There's no value in it for customers. There's no value in it for me or anyone else. So what I want to do is leverage my best-in-class AI ML capabilities that are already in many of my solutions and have that available for partners such as yourself, C3, to integrate into their app-level applications, if you will, right? So what I would suggest you look for is that openness, that open integration with third parties, how to accelerate and look for solutions that are accelerating the value, time to value, ease of implementation, closing that IT/OT gap that I mentioned earlier. I don't think companies are addressing it enough. I think the solutions exist. I think partners exist that have extremely good capabilities in this field, but I think companies need to leverage it more so that they can get greater insights into the health of their manufacturing assets. That is, for me, the number one critical thing. People are afraid of cybersecurity, rightfully so. They want to have a gap between the IT and OT environments, but there's ways of mitigating around it securely, safely, and at scale. I think that's the number one thing that is a big challenge for the industry right now that we're trying to address and cover with solutions like C3, like Google, and others.
Great, thanks. We've got a couple minutes left here, and I wanted to open it up to the audience for questions. I think we can take 2 or 3. Any brave souls? Yes, please.
Actually, I had 2 questions in mind. First, thank you for the insights on tools in manufacturing. The first question is, in the context of manufacturing and AI use cases, you have typically manufacturing operations, the operation part, the supply chain part, but the R&D part also. You started by saying that you're looking at more holistically at connecting use cases. Even if you have some ideas or not mature use cases, what do you decide, or what do you think you could have in healthcare for the R&D part?
So for instance, what we are doing is we are looking at how are we developing molecules, for instance, right? And we are collecting data, right, from the development of the molecule. At a certain point, molecule gets transferred to commercial manufacturing. And we recognize that actually the product is quite unstable. Because obviously we are looking at the development side, we are looking at that the medicine is active and it's creating value for the patient. We are not looking at the beginning of the development phase so much of manufacturability. So what we have created is we have created a feedback loop from manufacturing, collecting actually data on how these kind of medicine products are getting manufactured, what kind of, let's say, quality deviations we're getting, what kind of instability we're getting from an equipment perspective, and we are playing back into the design of new molecules. So that's kind of a feedback loop where we have data flows from development to manufacturing and vice versa, which is quite complex from a data perspective, data accessibility perspective, and also from a culture perspective, because in the past, these two units were quite isolated, and now they need to work together. So it's quite some also change management required.
The second question is a bit different. You know, in manufacturing, you manufacture the final product, but sometimes you manufacture a machine that could be sold. You know? And in this context, we heard a lot of data privacy when you sell a certain machine. I don't know if you came across some successful experiences in when you sell like a machine and you expect to get feedback from this machine to develop use cases.
You mean a machine that you're selling then to customers?
Healthcare, you're selling, I don't know, X-ray machine, for example, or anything. What could be the use cases around?
Yeah. So for instance, Roche has basically two divisions. One is pharma, and one is medtech, medical devices. And we are selling, let's say, diagnostic devices. So equipment which is, for instance, diagnosing diseases in I don't know, blood or urine, whatsoever. And one element that we did is obviously we are selling this equipment to hospital and labs. They are running the equipment and they are expecting that this equipment is running 24 hours, right? Because it's how they are making money. So what we did is developing, let's say, predictive maintenance solutions, which on the one hand, were reducing our service costs. So emergency visits, spare part component, all this. But we were actually developing a solution which we were selling to the customer on top of the equipment so that it will help them to manage the equipment in a different way. So at a certain point, we had actually additional revenue streams. We were, let's say, selling additional services with these products to, let's say, the customer. Real-time dashboards, equipment health, let's say, solutions, predictive maintenance solutions to manage their equipment in a different way. So for instance.
If I can add to that, products are overly censored these days, right? So we're measuring the health of the machine that builds the final product, right? To a point where we can actually get some very good insights. The quality of automation, increasing the quality of automation, increasing the ability to measure and get that clean data off the asset, to do better predictive maintenance, right? I think today those capabilities exist across the board. So that's what I'm trying to collect the data from and run some additional AI solutions on top.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the questions. Wish we could take more. We're unfortunately at time here. But thank you to our three panelists for the engaging conversation. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining.